So our last presentation of the day today is what's out there for BO support, and we'll invite Evan back for that.
Okay, so moving rapidly on, the good thing about this section is that it is sort of interactive, because I'm certainly not the fountain of all knowledge of what's out there with regards to SAP. There's probably a fair constituency of you here and also poked around looking to find out information. So you may have some favourite sites that you can communicate to the rest of us. So having said that, let's start the ball rolling. I will find quickly this presentation. And it should be here. Got it. Okay. So, let me, hopefully I still am on the wireless. And the one thing I always find dead useful, and which changes all the time, as soon as I've downloaded a version, they change, is the product manual site. You can get hold of every single product manual that SAP provides for business intelligence, i.e. the Business Objects platform, from this site. And as Paul mentioned, all of these presentations will be made available, so all these links I've included on there, so you don't need to kind of jot them down or anything.
Some of these you need SID.
Sometimes you need to have your SAP credentials for, sometimes you don't. Okay, so as they say, suck it and see is the way of looking at it.
Once you access your SAP system, get the number off of it, email it, and it'll give you a limited
That must be a well
SID
phrase.
And if you're very, very lucky, you'll get download speeds of more than dial-up on the SAP site to actually get it. So anyway, this is the actual live address. And in this particular address, you can obviously find all of the various things that you need. So, if you wanted to know the difference between Crystal Reports 2011 and Crystal Reports 2013, then you can see quickly Crystal Server, Crystal Reports, Crystal Server 2011, 2013 and so forth, or the Crystal Reports Designer, SAP Crystal Reports 2011 and 2013, okay? If you want a quick clue as to how many differences there are, it's a big fat zero. There are no upgrades as a result of the new Crystal Reports for Enterprise. There are no new developments on Crystal Reports, Big Client. It's all new stuff is being built into just that one tool. But as you can see, everything is categorized in different sections and so forth. Intriguingly, it's again set up on this whole analytics application top level. And again, you can see the various pieces here. You can navigate your way down into the actual platform itself, into release notes with versions, upgrade information, installation, general user guides, general administration guides, and so forth. I always find this a very, very useful site. I have it bookmarked and enjoy accessing that from time to time. Periodically, I will download options, and they tend to change on service pack levels, incidentally, which, unless you're aware of that, you might not be aware of the fact that they will generate a version for Service Pack 6 and Service Pack 7 and so on, especially if there are significant changes. Not always, but sometimes they will. So that's one I like. I also like this particular one, which is the Platform Components page. Oops, beg your pardon. And this is, again, a live site. This came up really with the introduction of BI 4.0. And this enables you to actually see all of the various components that make up the product, okay? So you can actually delineate everything in terms of the actual product itself. Okay, this is the piece here, and you have this interactive diagram here. And this is the new for BI 4.1. Watch this tutorial. Again, it's not unusual with SAP to have to make you jump through a number of hoops before you actually get to the end spot here. But what's nice about this is you can actually highlight any given option here and it will give you some more information. So what's the Crystal Reports Viewer? What's the Explorer Web Client? It will also denote what is, quote, new or at least upgraded at the different new version level. Okay, so some of these things essentially have changed, particularly because obviously there was a Crystal Reports for Enterprise for version 4.0, but in 4.1 it has some, quote, enhanced capabilities. Okay, so again, I'm not quite sure why they're saying that Crystal Reports, I guess they added 2 to the year number to make them, that's now considered an enhancement. Desktop intelligence compatibility pack that Paul was mentioning earlier and so forth, and so on. And then you can actually open up any of the given tiers, and then you'll see how they basically can say, oh, these are the different pieces that make up this particular important aspect. Just a quick FYI, when Paul was mentioning the RESTful web services, please note you need this web application container server to be running in your environment. It's not intuitive, because you normally don't think you'd have to run it if you're running your own web server, like Tomcat, but this actually hosts the RESTful web services. So just be aware of that, you'd have to bring that server up. Many people actually keep that server not running when they've deployed to Tomcat.
And I noticed it does. Oh, yes, it does. It does say that at the bottom.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. So it's done that.
It's documented, too. Oh, nice.
I'm seeing keep total registration of surprise in your voice there. It's always comforting. Central management, so obviously, so various things here, you know, again, through various aspects. Obviously, the Explorer Master Server isn't strictly speaking part of the platform, it's an add-on product. But more and more you see Explorer integrated into the platform. So as you can see, they've described it as such. So again, I find this a very useful reference, especially when looking at new releases of the platform, to actually go through this interactive diagram to, again, find out more information about the various components. Other things I use is actually on the same site, okay, and that is this little joyful piece of information. Again, very useful, and I will happily acknowledge that maybe I find this stuff entertaining and other people actually have a life, but I actually like to see exactly what is happening when you actually do the process, the back-end processes of all our servers. What is actually happening in the background? What is the flow of information between those servers? It always helps you when you're troubleshooting an issue on the platform.
I always thought this was one of the best parts of the managing servers
Right.
class, is knowing the process.
Absolutely, and we use this tool as part of delivering that class too. And again, you can actually see it'll actually describe every single aspect in a particular process flow. So if we're looking at, for instance, scheduling an SAP Crystal report, then it obviously sends a service request through the web server, through to the web application server, that then checks the security on the central management server, and then will actually read that from the CMS system database. It will actually then identify that it needs to actually send a response to the central management server to actually write that schedule into that environment. And then you can find out exactly what is happening in each of these tiers. So the tiers that actually are being outlined in terms of that product tier setup are actually then referenced again in this particular component tier. So all the components that belong to each of the tiers that they actually use to describe those particular applications are actually outlined here as well. So very, very useful piece here, and I will go back to the link again. As you can see, all of the various pieces there. So from Crystal Reports, again, Crystal Reports for Enterprise, Live Office, Web Intelligence, Analysis and Solution for OLAP, Explorer, even the upgrade management tool, what it's actually doing in the background, lifecycle management, and so on. So every single fundamental component of the system, and its inter-process communication that's happening in the background, all encapsulated on this one page of links. Very, very useful reference that I use quite frequently, because, as I say, nobody really commits that to memory. I used to try not to. Useful resources. So that's process flows. The other thing, especially for those of you who are thinking of moving from 3 to 4, sizing. Okay, Paul, as a matter of say, so, well, at least double it. Okay, is basically, if you actually run the SAP sizing guide, it's basically you're quadrupling it, because they kind of like are planning for you to make sure you can buy as much as you could ever possibly need, and so forth. But they do have a planning tool. They have a companion guide, and they have an online sizing tool. So this is actually an interactive tool that you can use And next one. And this will actually tell you exactly what sort of components are going to be involved in actually processing that information. This is a very meaty guide. But actually, as you're probably aware, and any system administrator will tell you, sizing a system is actually quite complicated. There are a lot of different moving parts involved. There are different types of applications. Web intelligence behaves very differently from critical reports on the platform, and so on. Different resources need different types of hardware resources. So certain things are kind of RAM hungry, and other things are CPU hungry. Some of you are doing a lot of disk I/O, others of which are doing no disk I/O at all. Okay? So actually sizing a system properly is actually quite a sophisticated activity, and something that needs a lot of due care and consideration. And whilst I think that it's probably fair to say that SAP, not surprisingly, has got into a fair amount of detail, perhaps a little bit too much detail in some instances, if you actually want to know exactly, and again they keep breaking these things out into these same conceptual tiers that we're getting used to now in the terms of how SAP views its architecture. Okay, so these will correspond again to those tiers that we were referencing in other material. But you can actually look at all the various pieces and all the different components that make up these things. So which particular aspects are being run on here, what sort of parameters being set on the platform are being used, and what is their impact in terms of a sizing type of activity. Okay. Oftentimes I would recommend with customers the best way to look at sizing is what do you have on your previous system and how is it performing, and then start to accentuate that through to the BI4 platform. But then use this as a potential reference guide at the very least. Dip into it and find out the sorts of different components that are being used and how they're being used to determine the kind of size that you need in this particular instance. And it'll go through with very, very specific details as to this will need this amount of gig per core, etc., dependent upon this kind of application. Okay? So again, a very, very useful reference guide that, again, I use periodically. And then I'm going to close the current tab. And then what you'll find is that there's a corresponding sizing guide, which is actually an online tool. It's actually a little no, I don't. So there you go. And I'll allow you to do I think I've got the wrong link. There's actually one that sits online. You don't actually need to download anything, so I may need to update that link. But again, you can look at all the various content. You can then move this to actually then interactively see to our small, medium, and large reports. And again, if you look at the guide itself, it will tell you what they think small is, what they think medium is, and what they think large is. And again, you can work with numbers, and then it'll eventually, spew out a number at the end of it that basically gives you at least a reasonable guide as to what you should do. Now, I wouldn't turn around and go straight to your purchasing department and say, do this, necessarily. I think you need to do some further analysis. They do tend to weigh heavy. So we did this for one customer, and it ended up with a ridiculous level of hardware, and then we kind of sat down and thought about it and kind of divided by two, and it came down to a more reasonable level. So, use your best judgment on these things, but again, a comparatively useful tool, especially moving from 3 to 4, when you know how you've estimated these things in the past, perhaps in terms of small, medium, large, and the numbers involved, and again, establishing these things. And please note that for performance for sizing, SAP has now developed this new language. They don't measure things in CPUs anymore, they measure them in SAPs. You know how this feels. So they actually, because CPUs have different power, okay, they said, oh, we can't just say CPUs because an HP CPU is different to a Dell CPU, which makes logical sense, I suspect.
Well, that's true.
And then they used to be MIPS, right, but they're now SAPs.
So, yeah, because MIPS was generic in the sense that it didn't matter.
Right.
Manufacturers, but of course you're quite right that there's too many other factors at play now, the amount of cash on the chip. And which
Absolutely.
chip
Yeah, whip chip, I mean, not hit the last hundreds, I mean.
right.
So you can see the logic behind it. The fact that they arrogantly call them SAPs, I think, is entertaining. But I mean, they could have used a measure. But interesting, before you actually add anything, this is what I find is entertaining. Before you actually add a single document, you're at 8 CPUs.
Okay, but then what is
8 SAPs. And a SAP is 1,000 SAPs is basically a CPU in most people's language.
That's what I was going to ask. So
Yeah.
what is the reference point? For what
Yeah,
is
so,
it?
I mean, again, it's a bit figure in the air, but typically, essentially, that's what the measurement that we would use.
So 1,000 SAPs equals one CPU
It's essentially one CPU measure. Yeah.
of,
Of
3 gigabytes.
Hewlett Packard version 3.3. Yeah, I don't, you know, as I said, it's a very general environment here. I mean, I don't know if Hewlett Packard publishes what its particular CPUs, how much SAPs they measure. I don't even know if that's common knowledge. I don't know. I haven't thought anything. But anyway, but sizing. So it's just something, you know, as you start to migrate to 3 to 4, or think about migrating from 3 to 4, a useful reference point at the very least. Alright, so what other ones do we have here? SAP Community Network. I won't link on this, but the Community Network has a lot of different articles and blogs. You will get to see the same faces, the same names with the same faces, and they'll become people that you trust. And then there'll be other people that you say, nah, I'm not listening to them, and so forth. They burned me one time, I'm not going to go back. But there's especially, you know, in certain areas, you'll get a lot of different kind of really useful guides. So, for instance, I also, this guy, Dennis Konolov, that's better, Konolov. There you go. So he is brilliant. He's all over the place like a, you know, the proverbial, and then he will give you tips on how to start troubleshooting. And you know, you'll start hunting around, you'll start finding these things, but the SAP Community Network has a lot of stuff floating around in terms of improving performance, troubleshooting, best performance out of WebI documents, So a lot of stuff floating around out there, so definitely worth poking around there. And then AZBOCUG is always a good reference as well. I have that reference there. Typically you need to set up an ID, the password and so forth, but they have a lot of different events, webinars and so forth, especially as you come around new release time. They're doing a number of events related around 4.1 right now. You can get on their calendar, they have a calendar of events, and then again you can witness those particular events. They're very, very useful, and I use them a lot. And then and YouTube. You would not believe how much stuff has been published to YouTube. So if you go into, if you actually put in that SAP training information design tutorial, you will actually find that there are about 20, 30 different tutorials on the information design tool, from start to finish. Complex things, simple things. So you can actually, essentially like going to a class. Not all of it is just produced by SAP, there's individual people that will produce it, and that's what those go on for hours. And then there's little like 5-minute chunks. So I do a lot of searching on YouTube now, and there's a lot of stuff out there, especially, you know, there's a particular issue you're having, it's not well documented in one of those guides, go search for it on YouTube, and you'll be surprised, you'll probably find something out there.
Does anyone have YouTube blocked in their company? Yes. I know because I come across that a lot. So, you know, then, you know, you obviously can go home and check it out from there.
Well, I bring my personal laptop into me with work
I know quite a lot of major corporations do block it, and government, some government institutions block it too.
Well, I think most of our bandwidth is
There's triple X sites that have to talk about.
People think it is their curriculum.
So yeah, don't forget our friend YouTube, there's a lot of stuff out there. And then obviously in the blogs, you'll find your own favorites, there'll be people that you trust, and so on. Obviously the Business Objects board is a pretty popular one now, but there's people I used to work with actually, Timo Elliott I used to work with, he's a very, very smart cookie. So anything he writes, I listen to. And you'll find a relationship with some of these people and so on that you'll actually trust and so on. So again, lots of blogs out there. That's just a very small subset. You could add at least 20, 30, 40 times as many there. Some of which are useful, some of which are, and you have to pay to get into them. You just ignore those and just go on to the next one that's free. Unfortunately, when you do Google searches, they also bring up the paid ones. So trial and error, you'll get to recognise which ones are looking for money from you, and then you'll happily ignore them, I'm assuming, unless you want to pay the money. And that's it.
You didn't miss my blog.
I was going to put the InfoSol, but I thought that would have been crass marketing. But anyway, you should go to the InfoSol blog as well, especially on the one on the promotion manager you just wrote.
You didn't list SAV Marketplace.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to give people pain.
I thought he was trying not to do that.
Yeah, and if you want to download, and this is a big tip, if you want to download software, do it in the evening. Don't try doing it during the day, you'll get terrible response.
Oh.
But actually, you raise a great point, because that is part of the problem. Everybody does go to the SAP Marketplace and are sorely disappointed not to find what they're looking for. I think it's a question of what you want. The SAP Marketplace is great if you're looking for descriptions of products and software and services and suddenly something will pop up, would you like to talk to someone? Chat with one of our salespeople, right? And so forth. So, and that's the problem with the main SAP website. Marketplace, the only real function that most customers will use it for is downloading software. And that's really, and that is a frustration unto itself. As Evan explained. But I think what he's showing here is a great collection. The SCN is fantastic. He's absolutely right. There's an incredible amount of information out there. And I don't know if you're aware of why so much gets published out there. But SAP has a system called known as the SAP Gurus, right? And to become a guru, right, you have to publish a certain amount of content, and people have to look and use that content and comment positively about it. And when you reach a certain number of points, you get the status of guru, of SAP guru. And then in order to maintain your status of SAP guru, you've got to keep publishing. And SCN is one of the best places for them to do that. So that's why it's so heavily populated with new information and so forth. So then you're probably all wondering, well, why would anybody want to become an SAP guru? That sounds like really hard work. Well, it's rewarding from the standpoint of recognition, right? Brand recognition of yourself and so forth. But also, you'll get free trips to Sapphire, to Tech Ed. They'll pay for all your expenses and everything as well. And they'll put you, on the booth there as an expert and so forth. And they wine and dine you and so on. And plus, if you're working in a company and so forth, you can justify to your management, oh look, I've got to go because I'm a guru, to this conference in Australia.
Yeah.
For a week. Or Dubai.
It's going to be on Tech Ed next one, so.
And so forth. But if any of you are interested, you can get on there and look up SAP Guru and so forth, because anyone can become SAP Guru if you're willing to put in the effort.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
One more question. I recall last year, I think it was, that SAP was promoting a program where you would take a certain set of training classes to understand their support system. Familiar with that? And then that would, accelerate knowing this, that you would be able to use their support system and be much more efficient and so forth.
Yeah. A couple of things there. There's another resource, which is the SAP tutorials. If you do www.sap.com/learnbi, right? There's a whole bunch of tutorials there, and I think they did create some tutorials around Solution Manager, right, to show you how to better utilize, right, because they use Solution Manager for their core management system, how to better utilize it, downloading, and so forth. But the non-BI tutorials are quite interesting. Most of them are from about 1 to 3 or 4 minutes in duration, and they pick a particular topic, and half of them are up on YouTube, or they're actual videos, so you get linked to the YouTube video, and the other half are more like interactive, flash files, right, where it will be a kind of a rock and scroll, right, where more like a Camtasia, that's what I'm trying to say, like a Camtasia tutorial on there. But the neat thing about it is they're all free, and so when the new release comes out, just as Evan was showing you there, the flow, they actually will give you a lesson on how to use, right, freeze panes in webbing, how to use this function and so forth, and they're all separate tutorials. And I think you might find them there on how to use the core management system. Also at SBOUC in January, they announced a new website that they're launching, which is all about everything you want to know about their BI offering. So they're trying to now get another site going, which is specifically for analytics, BI. And that was launched in September, beginning of October, so that's brand new. I can't remember what it's called.